everyone. Welcome to this session. Thank you for choosing this one. We are going to be talking about lessons learned from the Esri engineering teams, but also we'll see it's a little bit more than that. So as always, please remember sharing your feedback. Actually, part of the session we are sharing today and the lessons learned are also coming from you. So that's why it's so important that you keep sharing your feedback with us. So let's see very quickly which is the agenda for today. So first of all, I just want to make sure that everyone is on the same page. So we are going to see a little bit of the basics, and do a little bit show of hands. We will then go to the ecosystem of tools that are today available, some of the configurable options. Then we are going to start talking about the use cases, specifically when you are coding or where you're testing or where you're documenting. So I think that's going to be one of the probably most interesting ones for many of you. Then we'll see a little bit of the different workflows. It's not about the capabilities, but also how you use and you can use AI effectively. Then, because I know a lot of people have a lot of concerns about security and code quality and so on, we'll talk also a little bit about that. And then we'll be wrapping up with the habits to be effective and responsible AI developers. We'll finish with a few conclusions. Just a little bit about myself. I'm Raul Jimenez. I work on the developer experience team as a principal product engineer. I'm principally doing developer outreach, meaning that I go to a lot of conferences. I also learn about how other developers are using AI. And I want to make that point because we're going to be sharing other things that I think are very relevant that you should be aware that I have learned there. About the expectations, this is meant to be useful for anyone, no matter which is your skills level in terms of development, if you are a hardcore developer or product manager. As I was saying, this is going to be a lot of lessons learned from the engineering teams, but also others that we have learned from you. This presentation is very, very heavy in terms of content. So there are going to be a bunch of slides, a lot of tables. I'm not going to cover everything, but I just wanted to give you a reference material you can use when you go back to the office. So more than 35 use case examples, result mitigations, and so on. Of course, I have been using AI to help me build this presentation, so I just wanted to be upfront sharing that. And I will be sharing some personal opinions. So necessarily not everything is Esri's opinions. So let's get started. So first of all, I just wanted to do this show of hands. Can you raise your hand if you are using general AI assistance when writing code? How many of you? Like ChatGPT and so on. Perfect. Almost the whole room, I would say, or 80%. How many of you are using focused, code-focused tools like Codex or Cloud Code and so on? Well, I would say 60% maybe. Perfect, thank you. How many of you would recommend other developers to try this type of tools? Yeah, almost the same amount, 70 maybe. And how many of you have concerns about security and code quality and things like that? Perfect, the whole room, that's good. Okay, just wanted to share what we learned from you. So we have seen on the survey, we made a survey, I will share that survey at the end of this presentation. William was leading that, is here in the room. So we saw that almost 70% of the people replying the survey said that they are using it. Almost everyone says that they have a positive impact or feels that they have a positive impact in their productivity, 19 neutral, 5% negative. And then we saw that not a lot of developers have been using MCP servers yet in their developer workflows and day-to-day work. So we'll see a little bit about that too. So first of all, for those of you that have never used a coding agent and have never vibe code anything, I just wanted to give you a quick video to show you how it works and how it feels. So this is a simple process where I install GitHub Copilot in my Visual Studio Code. I'm going to be building an application, a simple script with Python to be able to publish files from my local machine to the cloud. So you just open the chat, type whatever you want to build, can be even vague, right? And you leave the machine to start thinking and creating the script for you. As you can see, it's starting doing the whole process, reading your project your folder directory, checking if there is anything available. You start asking, okay, I will need access to browse the internet. Do you allow me to do that? Then you say yes, no. It will keep going, and then it will give you the script. You can review what's in there, right? And then it's giving you even instructions on how you can run this code, which are the parameters that have been set and everything. So this is kind of the general workflow. This is, I would say, the most popular workflow nowadays in terms of how many people is vibe coding, but I wouldn't say it's the most recommended one. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, a little bit about vocabulary. I just want to make sure when we talk about agents, we are talking about this type of AI that is not only answering a question, but it's following up and iterating until it achieves the goal that you define. When we are talking about coding agents, it's those that are specialized on writing code. When we talk about the memory, normally in the context, we are talking about this mechanism that the AI facilitate to us so they can keep an understanding and can learn over the process. Most of the times it's just markdown files that are stored somewhere in the project, in the coding agent special folder, help you to keep improving the way AI is working for you. So you can give specific instruction about your styling, your team, most important concerns and practices. Then we have skills. We're going to see a little bit about that. But yeah, skills is about how you can run more advanced tasks. Then the tasks planning mode is about asking AI to prepare a set of actions without actually writing code. It's only think about how you can build this, and then we will decide if we move forward or not. And then this MCP server, as we have seen several times during the conference, is that mechanism that allows AI agents to talk to other tools. And we're going to see another example about that. Very briefly about the scope of some of the options that are out there. As probably all of us know, we have some proprietary, very popular tools like Copilot have GitHub Copilot, ChatGPT have Codex, Claude have Claude Code, Gemini have the Gemini Code Assist. But then if we don't want to use something that's proprietary and we prefer to run something locally because we feel more comfortable with that approach, we also have some good options out there. What we hear from you is that most of you have been using ChatGPT, then Copilot. You can see there the numbers, Claude Code, and Gemini. But within these tools, when you are running them on your IDE, you can pick and choose between different models. So this is how it feels. So this is a Copilot interface. So from here, you just click on that button, and it allows you to pick and choose between different models that you might want to use for different purposes. If you are trying to achieve a more challenging task, you can choose one that is more expensive, but also more capable. And the question I receive all the time, I hear everyone asking is, which is the best, right? That's a very difficult answer, a question to ask. So it highly depends on which is the task you're trying to do. It depends on the language, programming language you are using. It depends on when you are asking. Maybe next week the answer will be different than the one I will give you today, because they all differ in terms of the complexity of the code they produce, the number of lines of codes they produce to solve the same issue, the number of issues they introduce in your code. So just wanted to make reference to these leaderboards that probably are one of the most useful tools to give you a sense on how they perform. This is like the Sonar Cloud leaderboard that executed more than 4,000 Java programming assignments, and we're testing how they perform on different models. But keep in mind that, yeah, there are always trade-offs, and there is no universal winner for all the tasks. So use these rankings as guides. Do not choose one only because it's the top, the number one on one ranking. And keep that in mind. There are a lot of organizations that are using, as I was saying, multiple models depending on the task. So another important thing I would say, just to finalize grounding the stage here is it's very important. Agents can do a lot of things nowadays. It's not only about code completion, which is one of the most popular features of these agents. It's about properly using the memory and understanding the hierarchy of the memory. You should learn what are the skills, how you can use them, like all the different toolings that are available because they can execute commands in the terminal. Maybe you want to disable that. So there are a lot of configuration options out there. So here, for example, again, on Copilot, you can see there are the instructions, which is one of those skills. Then you can run the agent in a Docker container. You can ask for planning and also for surveying you. We are going to see that in a moment. And then, just in this case, you can see there are more than 100 tools within the extension in Copilot. And very briefly, just to keep in mind that if you are using these models, you might want to consider if you want to use the open source. That might be initially feels cheaper, but there are some hidden costs, of course, of maintenance or not, but also some safety reasons to use those. So keep that in mind. These agents or these technologies normally provide, when hosted on the cloud, the ability to consume them paying per use. Or you can choose flat subscriptions. Okay, let's go into the fun part. So let's start with the basics and the most common or easiest to understand use cases, which is for research and exploration. Many developers are using these agents to help them create code samples that fit their needs and are more context-based. Others, like when they are coding, they remember something could be done, they don't remember the name of the function, and they are using these agents just as a fast way to search the documentation and try to find what they are looking for. One of the ones I find more interesting is to review your technical specifications and trying to find gaps and trying to challenge your own specifications. As I was saying, in terms of code generation, we have those context-aware autocomplete. Like in this case, I'm on a JavaScript SDK example. I'm just saying, hey, I want to disable the mouse when I'm zooming over the map, and I just want to enable it when I press the Control key. It automatically give me a code snippet that I can potentially use. So I don't need to start finding, and maybe that sounds good, I just skip that. But beside that, we see a lot of use in terms of creating boilerplates and base structures. A lot of use in terms of creating some proof of concepts and prototypes of ideas that product management or some folks have in mind. A lot of people using it for regex extensions. We all know dealing with regex is normally not fun. So yeah, creating individual methods. Much more, even giving you feedback about your UI, UX, and how you can improve it. Then one pattern that we saw and we learned from our engineers is how useful it became to translate an application built from one language to another. So for example, our Kotlin team built some open source code samples that probably you all know that are there in GitHub. Our Swift team took those samples and asked the AI to translate it to Swift, and they were reviewing the code, and they said that they felt it was very, very successful and almost spot on. So that's I would say, a pretty interesting use case. But you can also think about changing something that is maybe suitable for enterprise and migrating it to online and try to keep and going through the nuances on the products, or maybe even considering it to upgrade from one version of the SDK to the next one and give you some, very carefully, of course, always reviewing. I think I will say that many, many times today, but yeah. The other thing is about automation and tooling. So a lot of people, I would say almost every developer using AI, coding agents, I have heard that they are, including myself, we are using it to generate small tools to process our data pipelines or to manage some local data sets. Like, for example, I was downloaded some data from OpenStreetMap. I wanted to make it ArcGIS ready. I have to polish the name of the properties. I have to remove a lot of stuff in there. It was like, oh my God, how do I do this now? And then I would just vibe code it because it was a simple tool. It's not going to go to production, but it was going to help me to do my work. So that's one of the ways I even created a Visual Studio Code extension to be able to access some features that I thought that would be improving my development workflow. So in terms of CI/CD, here you can see a screenshot where I created a skill that is called ship. Let me show you. That ship skill is just a markdown file that is helping me to run my test locally, to update the changelog, my markdown with the changelog, to update my to-do list where I'm tracking the progress that I have to do, to stage my changes, generate commit messages, and push the code. And it's just a set of instructions that are written in plain language explaining how to do all this process. So when I say update the changelog, so go here, I want the information categorized in this way, go to the to-do list, check those elements in the to-do list that have been already done. As you can see here, like when I say do the commits, follow the convention of fit for new features, fix for whatever I have fixed, and so on. And with that, you can easily run one command in the agent. It will read the markdown file. I will execute everything you said that you wanted to do. Sorry, I went too fast. Let me go back 1 second. So you can see generating one shell commands, and combining. Sometimes I have heard people combining different tools that they created themselves into a single tool that was speeding them up too. Okay, in terms of debugging, there are people that are taking compiler errors, trying to understand those compiler errors faster. There are people analyzing crash dumps. I'm going to show you right now, there's a video here about how to use an MCP server to debug your code, and how you can use it also to get familiar with some legacy code you might not understand, so it can help you explain those kind of things, and tracing the cause of an issue. So this is an example. I don't know if you can read it, but here I'm telling the agent, hey, use Google Chrome MCP. They have a developer tools MCP server, and I'm saying, open this local URL, click the red button that is requesting me to upload the GeoJSON file that I downloaded from OSM, and check the console because there are going to be errors. I want you to fix it. So let me fast forward a little bit. So I was thinking, okay, here you can see it. So when you send that prompt, the agent will take control of a new Chrome. It will launch Google Chrome. It will do whatever you told the agent to do. It will go to the URL, click upload the file, we'll select the file from my computer, we'll check the errors, and we'll start iterating to fix the problem, the problem I had on runtime, until it fixed it. In the meantime, I was doing something else. So I just went back, and when it was done, it's like, okay, I already solved your problem. I was talking to Chrome, I was checking your application, everything is good. So now you can check which are my proposal to fix your issue, and then you can take it or leave it. So I think this is a very interesting use case. In terms of testing and validation, of course, creating tests is not very pleasant all the time. Sometimes it's very easy to do, but I mean, it's a very use case. It's not harmful, I would say. It's not very dangerous, right? You can also use AI to find edge cases when you are trying to do those end-to-end integration tests. You can use it. We have heard also some people inside Esri thinking about, okay, we can use some synthetic data sets to be able to try some features. And of course, another thing you can do is to go, if you want, this is an example from another company that took a pull request. So one person made the changes, and they decided to use an agent before their colleagues had time to give them feedback. So it was like, hey, in this case, he was using Coder Rabbit AI, and he said, hey, review my pull request. So the agent went to with all the information on the pull request, was checking the code and giving some feedback. So it was kind of an easy way to get some early feedback if you're in a rush and you want to get some feedback. So it could be another interesting use case. Then refactoring and code quality. So I know there are a lot of tools like Sonar, Q, and also SLint that are very good to help us detecting those code smells and things that are potentially or could be improved. But we can also use agents to understand the reason why that's happening, or we can also use it to find some bottlenecks in terms of performance and code simplifications. I don't know if you have noticed, but if you're a web developer, now within Google Chrome, there is an AI assistant, and you can go there and start asking questions about the application that you have in the browser. So in this case, for example, I was saying, hey, can this script to be optimized for performance? I see that you are using a sync away that is locking the application at some points, and maybe you want to review that kind of thing. So that's another way of using it. And of course, for documentation, we see a lot of opportunities, right? Sometimes documenting some functions, some large files give you like a little bit of information at the top of the file, but you can also use it to do proofreading of your documentation, right? Sometimes keeping documentation up to date on your project can be very time-consuming. So I think AI also do a pretty good job there. Now, let's switch to workflows. When working with AI agents, we already talked about vibe coding, but we have other popular workflows like pair programming, which means you are using the AI to help you write, review, whatever you decide you want to do, but you are always included in the process, right? In vibe coding, you just give you the intent and leave the AI, the agent, to do everything for you. With pair programming, you need to be way more involved. I would say that's the most recommended pattern that I see and hear from people. But another interesting one is the spec-driven development, where, well, we are going to see a quick example of that right now. And there are many, many others. You can see these workflows grouping a different way, like, okay, which is the use case? What I need to achieve? And depending on what you need to achieve, there are different workflows that might help you to achieve what you're looking for. Is this for code I want to send to production? Is this more for something that I want to explore an idea, right? It just, as I said, I'm going to leave you this for reference. I just wanted to show you this plan, act, review workflow, or the spec-driven development. So here, you can see on the left side is a markdown file where I explain what I want to build. I specify which are the versions, or the SDK versions I want to use, which are the security considerations, which is the testing strategy I want to use. And on the right-hand side, you see it's popping up a window that it's interviewing me. So I ask the AI, hey, please, can you check this specification and find what's wrong with it, or what can be improved, or which are the trade-offs I'm not considering. And then it gives you, not only start giving you, asking you questions, but also suggest some possible answers that you might want to pick and choose if any of them like to you. If you don't like any of them, it always gives you the opportunity to send your own answer to the question. And with this type of interfaces, it's cool because you can go back and forth. So I don't know if you notice here, but there are several tabs. Each of these tabs are different questions that are going to be asked to me. And if I regret on something, I can go back. And not just that, when you are doing this, you can even, for example, annotate the specification that is built by the AI. So for example, here I was saying, hey, I saw you wanted to do this in this certain way, but keep in mind that trying to implement this, you are going to find these issues because this SDK do not support, right? You start explaining the nuances that you want the AI to keep in mind when writing or helping you to write the code. And on the right side here, this next step is, okay, now we have a specification. I think it's pretty solid. It's reflecting my needs, all the edge cases. Now, before we start working together, I want you to help me create a phased plan. So I want you to start with an MVP, to suggest me what we can include on that MVP, and we will go from there. I will give you feedback on what's working, what's not, how you can improve in the process. And I think that this, particularly I was trying it, it's very, very successful. If you spend I spent maybe 6 hours writing specifications with the help of the AI, but the result was very, very successful. Okay, now let's switch gears to risk and mitigations. First of all, security and privacy. I think this is the most important one. So there are a lot of risks when we are working with agents, right? Because at the end, the agent can take control, if you allow it, to do everything you can do. And when I say everything, I mean everything. Everything means from removing things, access to environment variables, access to folders outside of your working project. I can take any information, any API key, any sensitive data and send it to the cloud if you're using a cloud provider. So there are several things that you can do. I would say the most important one is to consider using containers. Like Docker, for example, you can run the agent on an isolated dev container, and with the options that these extensions provide, you can execute the agents within those containers, making sure that everything is isolated from your machine and you don't get in big trouble. But yeah, there are a few other things as you can read in here. So especially do not delegate anything related to security to an agent, and make sure that everything is always being reviewed. Use sandboxes and always anonymize any information that you provide to the agent to work. Because yeah, even working with development environments might not be something you want to do, so consider using mock servers to save you from some problems. Of course, there are also some organizational and legal considerations that you need to take in mind. It depends, for example, like I'm from Europe, so we have some rules in there, so you want to check which are the different policies from the different providers in terms of what they do when you send code there, if they are taking any kind of ownership, if they are ensuring that it's not going to be used for training algorithms, and so on. In terms of code quality, we all know AI is especially good at hallucinations, right? Especially when there are some edge cases and some technologies out there. So what we have learned is that, I have learned that from people inside Esri, outside Esri, is that it helped a lot to the AI to provide some source code that it can use to move from there. So you don't start from scratch, you provide a template or something, you know it's working, and you just try to navigate from there. But yeah, be very careful, because at the end, there might be a lot of hidden errors and a lot of silent failures, and especially a lot of spaghetti code out there. So that's one of the things to keep in mind when you are choosing one model. It might be very accurate, but it might create a lot of lines of code to solve the same issue. So, and that doesn't only mean that it's going to be a challenge to maintain that code, but it's going to be also a time-consuming task to review, because the more lines of code, the more time you will have to read them. Yeah, also AI is pretty good at skipping the best practices that sometimes we have on our documentation. Like with the JavaScript SDK, we have a page where we say, okay, these are the best practices to write our code with this version. So you need to provide guidance and specify explicitly, please read this, keep it in memory. These are the best practices to write code with this technology. But it's not only our code, the one that is being affected, it's also us. I hear from a lot of people, especially team leads, how it can be risky to allow people new to teams to start using AI from day one without having the foundational knowledge of the technology. Because if you allow to do that, then it's going to be way more challenging for these developers to be able to properly review the code. They won't know all the nuances of the technology. So it's important for people to get that foundational knowledge. It's very important when you are committing something to a repo. There are a lot of people that are suggesting to use, for example, Git alias. So whenever you are committing something that you have done with the help of AI, you can create maybe a different Git alias, and that will help you when you are doing a Git blame, trying to find, okay, when was this added to the repo, and who added it? So it might help you to understand the situation, not only the person, but if it was AI assisted, to learn lessons and try to avoid the same issue in the future. And well, I don't know if you're familiar with the Ralph loop, but it's when you start talking to the AI to solve a problem, and it's very stubborn and try to do it in one way. And it doesn't matter if you tell the AI to do something in a different way, it keeps going back and just spend hours and hours or a lot of time trying to get things right. But that also it's a risk that affects our productivity, our motivation. So yeah, there are a lot of things to be considered that affect us as humans. Also, in terms of technical limitations, there are many times where we see AI is not getting things right because it has very limited access to your own code base or to the latest version of something. We have to keep in mind that many of these models have been trained with code that was out there some time ago. So you need to try to specify or give all this context, all this new documentation to it. When you are working with very large projects, I have also heard from people like, the problem is that the AI doesn't understand the thousands of lines of code that there are on different files. So if that happens, I always say that a good thing to do is to try to create a memory within the memory file within the project that helps the AI to really understand where it should be looking for what type of information. In terms of refactoring, there are a lot of concerns, right? Something that might be working, rewriting it can be risky. So I always hear also the same advice is, do not use it to rewrite your code, use it to help you think about how you can rewrite the code, and be very careful with that. Also, we also see from different teams talking about the differences between the IDE, how they integrate all these capabilities from these different. So one example, for example, is with Xcode. The integration nowadays is not as smooth as Visual Studio Code and things like that. So yeah, there are some limitations out there. And when working with our technologies, we hear from you, especially, that when working with Arcade, it is very easy that it confuses things because it's not keeping in mind which is the profile that you're using, all these nuances when you are using Arcade within the map viewer versus the dashboard and so on. There are some other problems, as I was saying, with JavaScript, SDK, development, mixing widgets with web components. I suffer myself a lot of the calcite, overwriting my calcite CSS styles within line CSS. It's like, no, don't do that. So try. Again, sometimes I feel the developers are not satisfied with what they get because at first it might make a lot of mistakes. But I think the key sometimes is just to learn from those mistakes and create a memory that you can reuse and start giving specific instructions on why it went wrong and how it can do better. Yeah, so it falls short also on a few things. It knows a lot of things about public code and public information, but you need to provide your context. You need to provide your context, your customer context. If you want, again, this is up to you, but if you want to make things go smoother, probably this kind of information will help. I would say that what we see AI being very, very good at is, as I said, boilerplates and repetitive code, migrating apps, writing tests from clear specifications, doing prototyping on side projects, and explaining some code that has been inherited. So now, just wanted to wrap up. We are almost there with some advices on how you can become more effective and, I would say, responsible. The first thing is, before using AI, within your company or organization, you need to make sure that there are clear policies on what can be used, how it can be used, which are the tools that are approved, which are the use cases that are allowed. Like if you are going to go with an open source provider or with a cloud provider, like all of that is really, really important before you start doing anything else. I would say that you cannot go or you cannot not start with that. And then spend some time, as I said, learning all these features. They are growing and growing and growing every single day. So if you stick only to the code auto-completion, you are going to be missing a lot of things. So I think it's good to try to keep, I know it's very difficult for all of us to stay updated, but yeah, that can make a pretty big difference to understand how to use the memory properly. If you don't know how to use the memory, you are losing a lot of the productivity because it's going to make way more mistakes. Then, yeah, make sure that context is provided. Try not to do complex things in one shot. It's probably going to get it wrong if you try to do complex things in one shot. If you try to do complex thing using the cheapest and the fastest model, so do not rely always on the default configurations or rely on the AI to choose the right model for you. Then work with the AI. Do not let the AI to work for you. So use it to help you, to challenge you. Especially, I think challenging you is a very important thing, and trying to find things you might be missing. And of course, I cannot leave the habits without talking about the security aspects of it. So to be a responsible developer, right? Sorry, I forgot to add the responsible part to the title here. Yeah, make sure that you are reviewing the code, you are running everything in a secure environment, and you are testing as much as you can. Okay, let's wrap up with one slide about ethical considerations. So I cannot leave the room without asking you to think about all these things, how it's affecting you when using the AI. Make sure that you have think and agreed with the company all the implications that using AI have. It can be great, but yeah, we cannot give these things for granted and avoid thinking about how we are going to deal with these problems. But I took this from LinkedIn. Binay shared this sentence that I really like. It's like, I think many of us will agree that AI is changing the way we work, and sometimes it's going to be blurring those lines between professions. Sometimes you will feel a developer that are doing product management tasks, and also a product manager that will be doing development tasks and testing, QA, DevOps. So no matter if we like it or not, if we use it or not, I think it's already happening. We need to consider what's going to be our position and what do we do with that. So I would recommend everyone to stay away from hype, but also do not fear that it's in here, that this is here. Just try, even if your organization doesn't have a policy right now. I would say if on my personal side, on my personal computer, I created a free account with Copilot that gave me one month for free. I was trying at first how it feels. So I was doing it with side projects, nothing related to GIS. I was just to experiment with the technology and really understand how it feels. So that will help you understand what it is if you have never used it. I think we need to agree that AI should multiply and not replace our capabilities. And then, yeah, do not let the agent do the work for you. Just use them to help you, challenge you, and be more productive. So I really hope you learned something new today. I would love to invite you to share your lessons learned with us in the Esri Developer AI survey. As I was saying, that's the charts that you saw at the beginning, and many of the things we have been sharing today also come from your own lessons learned. That's also helping us to better understand what we need to do to improve your developer experience. Yeah, you can keep learning. I'm planning to write a blog article on the Esri software engineering blog. I don't know if you are aware about that blog, but there you have the URL. That's where we share some of our behind-the-scenes stories on how we are building our technologies and which are the challenges we face. So I think that's a pretty cool. It's not about learning how to use the technology, but it's about understanding how we build many things at Esri. Everything is changing so fast that I don't have a single source of information. I would say the official coding agents websites are probably one of the best resources to learn. But also, I would say coming to conferences, learn from these events is one of the, and engage with other AI enthusiasts will help you to stay up to date. So if you want to connect with me, there you have another QR code. I'm more than happy to learn from your experiences, and hopefully next year we will have another session like this, but with enhanced feedback coming from you. Yeah, please share your feedback with us. With that, remember, one important thing, I updated this slide because 2 weeks ago we created a new Esri developer account on LinkedIn. So if you want to stay tuned with what's happening on the resources and everything, I invite you, if you are on that social media, to follow us there. But yeah, you have many others. I'm done. So thank you very much. Do you have any? Any questions? Yeah, please.
I have very little experience with using AI to generate code. What I've seen it create is very scripty, just method like that. Have you used AI to create whole classes and modules that integrate with each other?
Okay, the question is if I have used AI to create classes that integrate with each other instead of just methods that are completely independent. To be honest, I haven't particularly, because I'm in the coding agent sphere. I have been experimenting for a couple of months. I haven't feel that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you. Any other question? Sorry, I don't see. Okay. Excuse me, speak loud.
Using the AI so far, like, have you found, specific AI that is useful for like C#, JavaScript? Like, what would you recommend for your programs? What's the most useful AI that's a programming language?
Let me try if I got the question. So if I have found any AI that are very
I'm curious, like, out of all the AIs you use, have you found specific AIs that are useful for specific programming languages?
The question is if I have found AI that are good at specific languages, right? I'm sorry to say I cannot. I have experience with many languages, just Python and JavaScript. I'm more than happy to take that question and try to answer that afterwards, and talk to the folks internally in terms of how they perform with different models and technologies. But there is a specific leaderboard that you can find. It's on the slides that focuses specifically on comparing how the models perform between different languages. So I would probably go there and take a look, because that sounds like a reasonable source.
Is there a framework you like for spec-driven development? Like GSD or BMAT or any of these frameworks for spec-driven development? Is there one you recommend?
I cannot personally recommend, but because I haven't tried many of them, but I heard that the Spec kit from Microsoft is a pretty good one. Oh, sorry. The question is if I recommend any framework for spec-driven development. Yeah, the answer was probably Spec Kit from Microsoft is a powerful one, but yeah, not talking about my own experience. It's about what I have heard.
You have experience working with teams that uses different language in the sense of like English, Spanish, something like that. So people use their normal language to send the prompt and then try to code using that. So any advice for you?
Well, the question is if I have experience with teams that are using the AI and sending prompts on different languages. Yeah. So I'm a Spanish speaker. As you can notice, I'm not a native English speaker. I talk to, well, mostly at Esri, I talk to people using English. But when I talk to Spanish people and so on, I normally feel that the language doesn't matter too much, at least with Spanish and English. I don't see people saying, hey, you should write the prompt in English because it's going to work better. So I think there should have been, I cannot tell about other languages, but I think it should probably with the popular or like the ones that are more commonly adopted should work similarly. I think.
You mentioned with Esri software specifically that there have been issues like with the wrong version or issues with like outdated elements of ArcGIS being used. In terms of updates that are happening to the Esri software, do you know how the models are being trained? Are they being fed training data, or are they being trained on documentation, or is it all just kind of dependent on the public creating prompts and asking them, I need help with this thing in ArcGIS?
Yeah, so the question is if these models are being trained on any specific code base to solve the ArcGIS related questions instead of if it's general or trained on any type of documentation that we provide.
Yeah, trained on documentation, or like are they being contracted out to like train on this data, or is it just
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think right now everything you ask to any public agent will spit things that are basically, they have a scroll from the internet and nothing specific we provide. But I think we are trying to deal with that situation. I think trying to provide better guidance and even, I think, potentially with some of the research we are doing, we will address part of that. Is that kind of correct? Yeah. So right now you have to deal with general purpose models, but hopefully we will get there soon to give you a better model to deal with these versioning issues and these nuances on technologies. We have been talking to many of you also and with our development teams to better understand how we can provide better assets for you and guidance on each specific technology to be able to avoid these common pitfalls that these AI models have. So, thank you. Okay, there are no questions here. Sorry.
Two questions. Is Esri providing a set of skills files for AI to use? And then the second question, what's the most complex thing that you've coded with the spec-driven development?
Okay, the first question is if we are providing any type of skill to help with the development. I think today there is no official skill. I have found things on the internet like experiments from people to use skills, for example, with the JavaScript SDK to work with 3D, but it's very experimental, nothing official today. That's part of what we are trying to better understand is how we can provide those kind of things. Sorry, I forgot already about the second question.
What's the most complex thing you've coded with AI?
The most complex thing with the spec-driven? I mean, at the end, sometimes you end up having that Ralph loop, right? So I would say the most challenging part when you are working with AI is not reviewing the code properly. So vibe coding a little bit and then trying to figure out why something is broken and then not being aware of all the changes. So that happened to me with some small tools that eventually were small at one point, but then I had more ideas. I kept adding things, and because I thought that they were going to be simple, I never paid too much attention to the code. And you end up on that Ralph loop where you see something that is not working. You are trying to debug manually, but then you provide instructions. AI kept getting it wrong, and it's like, okay, I solved it. And you have to go back. No, it's not solved. It's still failing. It's like, I would say those are kind of the challenges I found. But yeah, I have to say that I'm also pretty new on coding agents, so probably there are many more things. Any other questions? Oh, sorry. I cannot see with the light. Go ahead.
Can you share any insight into the degree to which Esri now?
If I can share, sorry, any insights on?
Into the degree to which Esri themselves are using AI to assist their coding internally, and what level of adoption, policies, or kind of the stuff you're talking about here.
Ewan, can you help me with that one?
Yeah. Take your microphone.
Yes.
Hi there. I think the question was how Esri are using AI ourselves, and we're using it a lot, as Raul said, to help with testing and prototyping. We don't actually use AI-generated source code in any of our products right now. And that's a policy decision. It may evolve over time. We use it in all the peripheral work. But there's probably one main reason. A lot of our C++ developers, if they're working on the proprietary code base, we have a lot of template-based programming, a lot of patterns that we've developed, writing code that runs on multiple devices, et cetera, et cetera. The AI doesn't know anything about the frameworks and the coding patterns that we've developed. So it doesn't really help that much. However, generating tests for testing the proprietary code, we absolutely use AI all the time.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? Nope. You got to go? Good to go? Okay. Thank you very much again, everyone.